Hey y'all, Mrs. Z here, and today I am super excited to show y'all we are gonna finally review the fourth and final Apex Legends Overdrive comic that dropped roughly 2 months ago. If you're new here, don't forget, hit that like and subscribe button, turn those notifications way on, and enjoy the show. So for the Overtime Comics, the final conclusion. We start off pretty much the same way the first three start off. A Saturday in 2733 on the planet Solace on the ship after finishing a match. Immediately we jump in and start focusing on Wraith. She makes the comment that while she tries to enjoy all the fans cheering for her, it's just a lot to ask, and she just goes straight into the void. We follow Wraith as she's basically checking in on all of the legends, seeing what they're doing. I wouldn't say that she was like spying on them, just kind of keeping tabs on them. She does, however, stop at Krypto and Mirage. Now the last time that we saw Krypto and Mirage, this is what happened. Revenant looks at Mirage and he's like, yo, I'll trade you your friend for the briefcase. And Mirage, Deadeye looks at him deadpan, I have no friends. And then jumps off the side of the building with the briefcase. And that is literally the end of that comic. Now cutting back to the fourth comic, we see Mirage basically jumping off of the building with the case and him hiding basically behind a building, kind of like hiding from Revenant. Wraith suddenly pops up right beside him, kind of gives him like a side eye, like, do you think he bought it? And Mirage is just so excited to see her. He gives her this huge hug, just totally relieved. Wraith then notices the case that Mirage is holding, and she's like, hey, what's in the case? And Mirage is like, yeah, I have no idea what's actually in here, but I think it's got to do with Kryptos' missing sister. And Wraith is like super confused. She's like, does he have a sister? And Mirage does make a point to say that while he does talk a lot, he also listens to his friends talking. And yes, Krypto does have a missing sister and he's looking for her. Mirage also mentions that Willis has something to do with this. Wraith then looks up and says, Willis? He used to be a mobster, but now he works for the Syndicate. I wonder what he's got to do with all of this. So, being Wraith and Mirage actually very similar to what we are currently seeing with the Season 13 lore, they decide to do some investigating on their own. Now we're going to cut back to Revenant and Krypto. Revenant's basically dragging Krypto to a ship that is hanging out, and Krypto's like, listen, whenever he's paying you, I will pay you 3 times that amount. Now this is a pretty important part later. Revenant looks at Krypto and says, you can't pay me what he's going to pay me. If I make this delivery, I finally get to die. Cut back to Wraith and Mirage. They've opened up the briefcase. However, it's basically an encryption device, kind of like with a TV on it. And Mirage kind of looks over like, if we only knew somebody that knew how to decrypt things. Cutting back to Revenant and Krypto together, we see Mirage run up and say, look, I've changed my mind. What if you cut me in on the deal? Like, we could split the payment and we'll both turn Krypto in together. And Revenant's like, yeah, sure. And he moves to attack him. However, when he's about to slash him, we find out that that was actually not Mirage, but a decoy. And while he went off to slash Mirage, the real Mirage was going back to Krypto, trying to like help him get away. Mirage looks at Revenant again and is like, hey, are you sure you don't want to like split the payment? And Krypto looks at Mirage totally horrified, and he looks at Revenant and he's like, yo, he doesn't know what he's asking for. Like, just ignore him. And Revenant just kind of looks at Mirage and is like, you know what? Yeah, you can totally have what I'm having. And with that, they go into the ship. Next, we pan in on Boss Willis. I think this is like the first time that we ever actually get to see him. That's his actual photo from the comics. Dude's all kinds of nasty. Like, I had to look at that face for a minute and I was like, is that just like the comic look, or is that just that? Nope, that's actually how the dude looks. But anywho. So Boss Willis calls Krypto by his full government name. He's like, yo, Taehoon Park, I'm so glad that I was totally right about how I thought that Krypto was you. I'm just really glad that I can officially confirm it now. Thanks for that. He then asks Krypto, like, hey, have you had any updates on Mila? Like, do you know where she's at? And Krypto's like, dude, don't even say her name. You completely destroyed my family. Willis then pulls a key out of his shirt, like on a necklace, and he's going towards the briefcase. And he's like, you stuck your nose where it didn't belong. Meanwhile, Mirage is just kind of standing around next to Revenant, and he's like, listen, I don't understand anything that's going on right now. I am so confused. What are y'all talking about? And Revenant's like, shut up, skinbag. Like, typical Revenant thing, typical Mirage thing. Love seeing it in the comics, because it's pretty much the exact same thing that I feel like would happen in a game, or something that Mirage is like invested in, and Revenant telling him to shut up. I really like that. Next, Willis actually puts the key into the encryption device, and he looks at Krypto and he's like, so I'm really excited that we get to meet face to face, but we're actually missing one person. And as he turns the key in the encryption device, it turns on and Mila's face comes up. She then starts asking Krypto, like, hey, why are you with him? What are you doing there? Don't trust a single word that he says. Mirage is yelling for Mila to, like, tell us where you are so we can, like, come find you. And Krypto's telling her that he's going to try to find her. Willis then says enough and completely shuts the device down, closes the briefcase back. He then looks at Revenant and says, hey, teach these legends how to fly. Revenant then kind of takes Krypto and Mirage to, like, the side of the ship where they've basically opened it while they're still flying, and the goons are behind them, and he's getting ready to, like, push them off the side of the ship when Wraith teleports in. She teleports Mirage and Krypto out completely, so they just pretty much knock out the goons. They leave Revenant there and teleport out. Willis then kind of, like, sticks his head out and he's like, where did everybody go? But then he sees, like, a landing pad, and he's, like, trying to get Revenant to help him land the plane or land the ship because, like, nobody else is there to help. And all of a sudden, all of the lights go out. Now, if you remember in the first 3 comics, the lights have gone out. We actually found out in the 3rd comic the reason why, right here. Bangalore throws a smoke grenade. And while the Trident attempts to pew them, they're like, all right, guys, we're going to turn our thermals on. They run into a building because they've got the sights of a stormtrooper. We see, like, the light kind of, like, I guess what would resemble a blinking light in the next panel. And then we switch over to Loba, Bangalore, and Gibby, with Bangalore commenting that Trident just took out the entire grid. So anywho, all of the lights in the city are out, so Willis can't figure out how to land the ship at all. He's asking Revenant for help, and Revenant's like, yeah, you're definitely aiming for the roof of a building right now. And Willis starts screaming, telling Revenant to help him, like begging him to help him, and Revenant just kind of looks at him and says, thank you. Because we all know Revenant has had enough of life, which is kind of fair. We then see a huge explosion, which also explains the end of the 3rd comic for us when they're at the hospital. Well, this happens. Octane says, oh no, amigos. There's, like, a static speech bubble saying, landing zone ship incoming, and Watson yells, incoming. We see the dropship come in, and then we see a crash, and we see all of the legends flying everywhere. And then you just see, like, smoking ruins, no people, nothing, it's just smoking ruins. So yeah, now that we know what caused that explosion, next we're switching over to different legends. And this part we now actually see the building rubble inside the building rubble. We've got Gibby, who's done a dome, and he is protecting all of the other legends, making sure nothing kind of, like, falls in on them. Domes are very useful in, you know, falling buildings. All of the legends are trying to figure out, like, what's the best way to get out of here. Bloodhound does a scan and says, okay, so there's no bodies in this general area. I think we could probably get out here. They do warn the group, though, that they are sensing prowlers outside. Rampart busts Sheila out and manages to basically bust a hole through that they can all climb out of. And she tells everybody to start triaging and, trying to help everyone that they can. Next, we see Watson doing her little electricity thing, trying to get the power back on because it was a hospital that was crashed into. And then a prowler comes up behind her like it's going to attack her. We then see Caustic come out and just destroy the prowler. And then he just kind of leaves, with Watson turning around, being like, seeing the whole thing and being like, Dr. Caustic? But he just walks away. He's done. He's made sure that she's alive without actually having to have a conversation with her about it. Next, we see Octane doing Octane things where he's basically running around, jumping and grabbing people, going, I got you too, and saving people out of the rubble. We then see Bangalore saving a man, kind of crawling out from some rubble, and she kind of makes he's saying thank you to her, and she makes a comment, well, I'm actually looking for the guy that owns this jacket, and he's like, yeah, that's my jacket. And she's like, really? Is it your jacket? Like, where did you get it from? And at that point, he's just like, like he didn't actually get it. I don't know. And she's like, you know what? Hold that thought. I'm going to talk to you when we're done cleaning up this mess. Mirage, Krypto, and Wraith then show up at the perfect moment, and Octane's like, yo, we gotta find a Lifeline. I haven't been able to find her yet. Now, the last time we saw Lifeline, she was possibly dying, stuck in the hospital that Octane had basically run her to, and she was unconscious. According to the comics, she was dying. Who knows? But yeah, so they haven't been able to find Octane or Lifeline yet. Octane's freaking out. Obviously, at this point, they are still best friends. We then see Pathfinder and Doc show up together, and if you remember back to comic number 2, Pathfinder basically got botnapped. He got botnapped, and bad guys were trying to take apart his body to sell on the black market, basically, but then somehow Doc's body and Pathfinder's body, well, their minds got mixed up. So Doc is now holding Pathfinder's mind, and Pathfinder's body is now holding Doc's mind, which I don't think Doc has a regular mind. Or not like a regular mind. I think Doc is more like a program that listens, maybe closer to like that of like a puppy, whereas Pathfinder has like a whole personality involved. Mirage looks over at Krypto and he's like, hey bud, this is totally your kind. So Krypto walks over to Doc and Pathfinder and says, hey, this might tickle a minute, and does some magical plug switching, and ta-da! Doc is now in Doc's body and Pathfinder is back in Pathfinder's body. The next panel, we see Octane coming out of a Wraith portal into the rubble. Having found Lifeline, he carries her out into safety. And as he is setting her down, she miraculously recovers from being on the verge of not alive anymore. And she looks up at him and she says, tell the audience, no encore. Y'all, if we are not talking about a Hollywood miraculous recovery, maybe that only happens in comics. Because I don't even think that happens in movies. I don't know. What are your thoughts there? Finally, we see Bloodhound continuously scanning to see if there is anyone left in the rubble that they can save. And all of a sudden, they find Willis, who somehow survived the ship crashing into the building. Don't know how it happened. It's comic book science, y'all. Bloodhound then makes the announcement, we have found our beast. And Willis is basically mad at being rescued and possibly just mad that he's getting called out for being a bad guy. And he's like, listen, these people aren't heroes. They're definitely not legends. They are pawns. And like, you people telling the crowd that is gathered, like, you people are crazy for actually believing that these people are good people. Then all of a sudden, we see Revenant's hand popping up from the gravel, and Willis looks super relieved. He's like, oh, great. Revenant, go ahead and take all these dudes out for me. Revenant then looks over at him, and his eyes are like on fire, blazing. And he's like, no one controls me. You promised me death, so consider this promise kept. And then he takes his little sight thing, and he's like, wah, and he kills Willis. Because that's just climactic. Because that sounds maybe possibly more believable than Lifeline making a miraculous recovery. Revenant then picks up the broken comms unit and hands it to Krypto. I feel like this is just a really big change of personality with Revenant, like, I can understand him killing Willis, right? I can't understand him giving the comms unit to Krypto, because at this point, I feel like that would require Revenant to have empathy, and I don't feel like that's a quality that he possesses. So that kind of confused me a bit as well. I felt like that was very out of character for him to do. Who knows? Krypto's looking at the encryption briefcase, and he's just super bummed because it's pretty much trashed at this point. It is crushed. Mirage then puts, a hand on Krypto's shoulder, and he's like, it's cool, we'll help you rebuild it, because that's what friends do. And then he goes, and by we're going to help you rebuild it. By that, I mean Watson, because she's a genius, but I'll be there pouring drinks. Because, Mirage is wholesome, and this, I feel like the comics did stay fairly close to who Mirage is as a character and who we see him as. We then cut to Bangalore holding the jacket that she's found that is apparently confirmed to be Jackson's jackets. I couldn't tell who she was talking to because, we just have really, really good artists in the Apex Legends community, and I don't think any of them were hired to do this comic. But she's basically saying yeah, it's Jackson's jacket, but it's more than I had yesterday. So I don't know if they cut her having the conversation with the guy, or if the dude that initially had Jackson's jacket kind of walked away, or if the guy lied and said he was the owner of the jacket when he wasn't really the owner. So I'm really glad that that's already been sorted out as far as our actual lore goes, because in the comics it was not helpful at all. But finally, we see Lifeline picking up the Apex trophy, the winner's trophy, out of the ashes, and she's kind of dusting it off, and the sun is starting to rise in the background. And she's like, well, I guess this is up for grabs again. Octane looks over at her and says, yeah, you still got the fight in you. This time we'll be on the winning side. We then pan out to all of the legends kind of walking away. Okay, all of the legends except for Caustic and Revenant, and that's just because they're moody. But we pan out to all of the legends as they are walking away and getting cheered by the crowd, and Rampart says, we already are, meaning they're already in the winning circle, as a whole, because they're all pretty awesome, except for Revenant and Caustic. And that is the fourth and final Apex Legends Overtime comic. I didn't hate it. I will say I did not love it. I felt like there were a lot of errors throughout all four comics that if they had, I'm going to say proper editing, I'm just going to say that whoever was in charge of editing them, maybe they just hadn't had enough coffee when they reviewed that particular page or panel yet, and it was the first thing in the morning, or maybe they reviewed it on a Friday evening. I don't know. But I felt like there were more errors and just the little things that they picked out. The art wasn't the best art I've ever seen, but I said this in the first Apex comic when I reviewed the first one. I'm gonna stand by it. The Apex Legends art community is so absolutely fantastic and gifted and brilliant that we are so spoiled that nothing can compare to them once you've seen their art. They're too good. So I'm not gonna say any bad things about the artists that did the comics, because I just don't think that they were part of the Apex art community, and that's okay. We're just really spoiled. But alright, y'all, thank you so much for tuning in and watching this. This has been a difficult series to do because I definitely was going outside of my comfort zone. But if you've read all of the comics, what are your thoughts on them? How did you feel about them? Were you bothered by the errors that we continuously saw, or did they not bother you very much? This is the first comic series I've ever read. I've never actually owned comic books before, so my first 4 comic books were Apex Legends comic books, which I'm pretty cool with. But alright, y'all, thank you so much again for tuning into the series. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. Turn those notifications way on. And I will see you all next time. Go team!